Brothers and sisters, in our pursuit of strength, clarity and peace, the greatest battle we often face is the one within. For just 3 days, I ask you to walk a different path, not outwardly, but inwardly. Change how you speak to yourself, because the words you whisper in silence become the beliefs you live by. Let us explore 4 key ways to speak to ourselves with the wisdom of discipline and compassion. When you begin to speak to yourself differently, the first shift must start from ownership. To say, I am responsible, is to take back the power you may have unknowingly given away for years. It is not about blaming yourself. It is about choosing to respond. It is about meeting life not as a victim, but as a participant. Whatever thoughts arise, whatever emotions visit, whatever actions follow, if you carry the attitude of responsibility, then nothing controls you unless you allow it to do so. For just 3 days, try this. Say to yourself in the morning, I am responsible for my thoughts, for my breath, for my direction, for how I react to people, for how I respond to failure and success. You will start to notice something very quickly. The world may remain the same, but your experience of it becomes different. Because you are no longer trying to control the outside. Instead, you are mastering the inside. When someone offends you, responsibility allows you to pause and observe when someone disappoints you. Responsibility allows you to reflect and release when life challenges you. Responsibility says, this is my moment to practice. This is my opportunity to grow. This is where the path of the student begins and it continues. Because to walk the way of self-mastery is not to escape discomfort, but to transform within it. If a storm comes, the tree cannot stop the rain, but it can hold its roots deep into the ground. When you accept responsibility, you become like that tree, no longer reacting wildly, no longer bending to every opinion, no longer fearing change, because you have chosen presence over panic. You have chosen strength over reaction. You have chosen response over blame. Some people fear responsibility because they think it means carrying the world. But it is not weight, it is clarity. It is remembering that you do not have to fix everything. You simply have to show up fully to each moment with intention, with attention, and with presence. When you speak to yourself through responsibility, your inner world changes. You are not waiting for apologies to find peace. You are not waiting for perfect conditions to be content. You are not seeking control over others to feel safe. Instead, you are rooted in your own ability to choose the next right step. You begin to see that even your thoughts are not your masters. They are suggestions, not commands. So you say, I see this thought, I hear this fear, I notice this doubt, but I choose what to water. I choose what to repeat. I choose what becomes my habit and my belief. This is not force, it is freedom. The freedom to shape your inner and landscape. As a gardener tends his land, when something goes wrong, the average mind searches for blame. Who did this? Why did this happen? Whose fault is it? But the responsible mind asks, what can I learn? What can I change? What is this moment here to teach me in this way? Every event becomes useful. Even pain becomes a teacher, not a punishment. Even failure becomes feedback, not finality. In your relationships, responsibility softens you, not because you tolerate what is harmful, but because you stop outsourcing your self-worth to the actions of others. You begin to see, I am responsible for how I let people treat me, for what boundaries I set, for how I show up. And that is a shift from people-pleasing to self-honoring, from conflict to clarity. You also become aware of your energy, your habits, your patterns. You begin to say, I am not a slave to repetition. I am not bound to yesterday. I am free to change in this moment. I am free to choose something different, even if it is difficult, even if it is slow. I am responsible for my effort, not the outcome. And that gives you peace, because you no longer chase results, you commit to practice. This does not mean you will never feel low. It does not mean your mind will always be silent. But it does mean you will know where to return. You will remember the way back to center. You will not get lost for long because you have built a path made of small moments of choosing responsibility again and again. So for 3 days, say this to yourself when you wake up. Say it when you feel confused. Say it when anger rises. Say it when fear whispers. Say it when doubt appears. I am responsible. And notice how this one sentence begins to quiet the noise. Notice how it makes you breathe slower, walk calmer, think clearer, speak with more purpose. And by the end of these 3 days, something will start to settle within you. Something ancient, something stable. The knowing that you do not need to control everything to be at peace. You simply need to show up as the one who chooses, the one who learns, the one who responds. And that is who you already are when you begin to take responsibility for your inner world. Something deeper begins to unfold. You start to realize that the thoughts passing through your mind are not you. They are not your identity. They are not your truth. They are not your reality. They are movements. Like clouds in the sky, like waves on the water, like wind through the trees, they come and they go, but you remain, and this realization changes everything. For 3 days, speak to yourself with this awareness. I am not my thoughts. I see them, I feel them, but I am not defined by them. Just as you would not say you are the rain or the wind, you must not say you are the fear or the doubt or the anger, because if you believe every thought, then you hand over your peace to something that is not even permanent you. Give power to voices that rise and fall without your permission. When a thought says, I am not good enough, you pause, you observe, you do not obey it. You say, this is just a voice, it is not a fact. When a thought says, I cannot do this, you watch it pass like a cloud and remind yourself this is not the truth. This is just a moment. And moments change just like breath, just like seasons, just like the mind itself. This is not about fighting the thought. This is about no longer following it. It is not about suppressing the mind. It is about stepping back and seeing clearly, because the mind is not your enemy. The mind is a tool. It produces thoughts, just as the lungs breathe and the heart beats. You do not judge the heart for beating faster in stress. So why judge the mind for producing anxious thoughts instead of reacting? You observe instead of clinging. You let go. When you wake up in the morning, you might feel 100 thoughts. Before you even open your eyes, they might be about your past, your worries, your work, your fears, and if you follow them all, you are pulled in every direction. But if you remember in that moment, I am not my thoughts, then you create space, and in that space, peace returns. Presence returns, your power returns. This awareness grows through practice. When you walk and a thought appears, you do not chase it. You return to your step. When you eat and a memory arises, you do not get lost in it. You return to the taste. When someone speaks and a judgment forms, you notice it, but you do not feed it. You return to listening. This is not escape. This is mastery. This is choosing to live from the stillness underneath the noise. For many people, the mind is a storm, a constant noise of self-criticism, regret, distraction, comparison. But that storm has no control if you stop beating it. You do not need to win every battle inside your mind. You simply need to step out of the war and return to what is real. The breath is real. The body is real. The action in front of you is real. Everything else is just a visitor. Some thoughts are useful, some are not, but you are the one who decides which ones stay. You are the gatekeeper, not the servant. When you believe you are the thought, you become reactive, anxious, angry, lost. But when you see the thought as just a thought, you remain calm, clear, present. You realize the mind can speak, but it cannot control, unless you agree. This does not mean ignoring everything that arises. It means watching with wisdom, watching with space, letting the river of thoughts flow while you sit on the shore. It means not jumping into the water every time a wave appears, but remaining rooted on solid ground. This ground is your awareness. This ground is your true self. When you face fear, you say, "This is a thought, not my destiny." When you face doubt, you say, "This is a wave, not my identity." When you face anger, you say, "This is a storm, not my nature." And when you return to this again and again, even in small moments, something shifts. You are no longer lost in the fog, you are walking through it with a torch. The practice is not complicated, it is consistent. When the thought arises, you pause, you breathe, you observe. You return when it comes back, you do the same. And slowly the thoughts lose their grip. They pass like birds across the sky, and you do not follow. Because you have remembered the sky is vast, the thoughts are small, the space is you. This way of speaking to yourself is not soft, it is powerful, because it requires discipline, it requires presence, it requires a deep commitment to your own peace. And when you speak to yourself like this for 3 days, something within you becomes lighter, not because life got easier, but because you stopped carrying what was never yours to begin with. You begin to move through your day, not pulled by every emotion, not trapped by every thought, but walking with clarity, responding with intention, living with awareness. And this is what freedom looks like. Not the absence of thought, but the presence of wisdom. The space between reaction and response, the stillness underneath all movement. So for 3 days, speak with this awareness. Whenever a thought rises, speak silently. "I am not this. I see it, but I do not follow it." Whenever you feel overwhelmed, remind yourself this too shall pass, because it is only a thought, not a truth, not a command, not who you are. And when the 3 days pass, you may notice that something inside you has changed, not because you became someone new, but because you returned to what you always were. Silent, spacious, aware, grounded plus. When you begin to take responsibility and observe your thoughts without becoming them, something else becomes clear. Every moment that arrives is not just something to survive or escape, it is something to learn from. Every moment is your teacher, especially the ones that are uncomfortable and unwelcome, the ones that stretch you and shake you. These are the moments that carry the most wisdom, not because they are easy, but because they reveal who you are under pressure. For 3 days, talk to yourself with this understanding. Every situation, good or bad, easy or hard, is trying to teach you something. When you feel angry, instead of exploding, you ask, "What is this emotion pointing toward? What value did I feel was crossed?" When you feel anxious, you ask, "What am I resisting? What future am I fearing?" When you feel sad, you ask, "What is ready to be released? What part of me needs attention?" This is not analysis, this is presence. This is not control, this is curiosity. The problem is not that we suffer, the problem is that we suffer and do not listen. We repeat the same pain again and again because we did not sit with it the first time and ask, "What do you want me to see?" If you shift your perspective and treat every experience as a teacher, then even pain becomes sacred. Even discomfort becomes part of your training. This is the way of the mindful warrior, to meet each moment as it comes, not with resistance, but with readiness, not with blame, but with awareness, not with fear, but with humility, because you do not grow by running from the storm, you grow by standing in it with open eyes and steady breath, knowing this too is part of the way. Every moment of your day can be a mirror. When someone speaks to you, listen, not just to their words, but to your reaction. If you feel defensive, what is that showing you? If you feel small, what belief is being touched? If you feel frustrated, what expectation was unmet? And in every mirror, you see something, not to judge, but to learn, not to escape, but to embrace. When you eat, do you eat with presence or with distraction? When you walk, are you walking to get somewhere, or are you feeling each step when you are alone? Do you reach for noise, or do you sit with your own company? Because every choice is teaching you something about yourself. Every pause is an invitation to return to your center. The challenge is that most people treat life like a problem to fix or a ladder to climb. But you can also treat life like a classroom to learn, not from books, not from theories, but from the moment in front of you. A flat tire, a harsh word, a missed opportunity, a quiet sunrise. These are all lessons, not because they are dramatic, but whether it's friends, family, partners, or anybody. Because they hold the power to reveal if you are paying attention. When things go well, that moment teaches gratitude. When things fall apart, that moment teaches resilience. When people praise you, you learn about ego. When people ignore you, you learn about patience. When you are tired, you learn about balance. When you are restless, you learn about stillness. Every experience holds a thread of wisdom if you are willing to sit still long enough to find it. This is not about always liking what happens. It is about being awake enough to grow from it. This is not spiritual pretending. This is spiritual maturity. To say, I may not enjoy this, but I trust it has something to offer. To say, this pain is not pointless. This challenge is not random. It is a lesson wrapped in discomfort. Some days the lesson is to slow down. Some days the lesson is to let go. Some days it is to act. Some days it is to rest. But you do not know what is needed unless you listen. And to listen, you must become quiet. To listen, you must create space between the moment and your reaction. And in that space, the wisdom begins to speak. When you face something difficult, instead of saying, why me? Ask, what now? What can I learn? What is this showing me about myself? Where can I grow? How can I respond differently this time? And when you practice this again and again, the same old situations stop having power over you, because you have taken back your role as the student of life, not the victim of it. And in this practice, you build something strong. You build inner trust. You start to see that nothing is wasted. No experience is meaningless. Even failure has a message. Even delay has a purpose. You stop needing everything to be perfect and start needing everything to be real. This is the way of transformation, not through escape, but through direct experience, not through hiding, but through awareness. You meet your life with open eyes and open hands, ready to receive its teaching, even when it comes wrapped in difficulty. So for 3 days, walk through your life as if every moment is a Bremen teacher, because it is. Every person you meet, every emotion you feel, every challenge you face is showing you something about your path, something about your strength, something about your next step. And when you listen deeply enough, the lesson becomes clear, the growth begins, and the path becomes your own. Plus, when you take responsibility and stop identifying with every thought, when you treat each moment as a teacher, something begins to awaken deep inside you. Something still, something strong, something silent. This is your center. And to live from this center is to return to what is unshakable within you. Because storms will come, people will leave, plans will break, your own mind will sometimes rise against you, but in the middle of all of it, there is a stillness that does not move, a silence that does not scream, a strength that does not need to be loud for 3 days. Speak to yourself from this place. You do not need to become anything, you only need to return. You do not need to chase peace, you only need to remove what blocks it. You do not need to force clarity, you only need to be quiet enough to hear it, because everything you are searching for is already inside. It has always been there, buried under layers of fear, noise, opinions, distractions and roles. This is why stillness is not an escape, it is a return. It is not a luxury, it is a necessity. The same way the body needs rest, the soul needs silence, but not the silence of nothingness, the silence of presence, the silence of depth, the silence of meeting yourself without distortion. And this meeting does not happen through effort, it happens through surrender, through letting go of the need to fix, prove, compare, chase, and explain. You do not need to earn worth, you already are. You do not need to achieve peace, you already carry it. You do not need to fear the moment, because the moment is never against you. It is always bringing you home. The noise around you and within you is not the enemy. It is the invitation to go deeper, and when you sit in that depth, you start to notice something. The things you thought you needed begin to fall away, and what remains is enough. Stillness is where your breath becomes your anchor, where your body becomes your guide, where your awareness becomes your strength. When you stop running from yourself and sit in that space between thoughts, between actions, between identities, you discover the one who watches, the one who never left, the one who knows not with words, but with presence. And in this space, healing begins. Not because you fixed the past, but because you stopped dragging it into the present. Not because the future is certain, but because you are no longer afraid of what it might bring. Because you have built something unmovable, something steady, something honest. And real inside stillness does not mean you stop living. It means you start living fully, not reacting but responding, not rushing but arriving. Not grasping but allowing. It means you walk through life with clarity, not because you know every answer, but because you know how to return when you are lost, how to breathe when the mind is heavy, how to listen when the world is loud. For many people, silence is uncomfortable because it removes the distractions that cover their wounds. But healing does not come from avoidance, it comes from presence, from meeting yourself where you are, without judgment, without pretending, without escape. And the more you do this, the more natural it becomes, the more peace stops being something you visit and starts becoming where you live. You begin to notice that life moves in rhythms, sometimes fast, sometimes slow, and you do not fight the rhythm, you flow with it. You stop trying to control every detail and start trusting the timing. You stop holding on so tightly and start opening your hands, because you understand what is meant for you cannot miss you, and what is not meant for you cannot stay. When you live from this place, even in the middle of difficulty, you remain grounded, not because the problem disappears, but because your response comes from depth, not from fear. When someone offends you, your silence becomes your power. When a plan fails, your breath becomes your reset. When fear rises, your awareness becomes your anchor. This is not weakness, this is mastery. You do not need to convince the world of your value. You know your value by how you sit with yourself in the quiet. You do not need to be seen to know you exist. You do not need to be praised to know you are worthy, because your worth is not a performance, it is your nature, it is your essence. And the closer you move toward that, the more peaceful your life becomes, not because it is free of challenge, but because it is full of truth. This is the final shift, to speak to yourself not with noise but with presence, not with fear but with inner stillness, to return again and again to that space inside you where nothing needs to be added, where nothing needs to be taken away, where you are simply here, aware, breathing, alive. And that is enough. So for 3 days, each time the world pulls you outward, return inward. Each time the noise rises, choose quiet. Each time the fear speaks, return to breath. Each time the mind races, choose stillness, because stillness